This one is tilting its neck. It's hopping in circles. You might think it's acting cute to beg for food. In fact, it's already critically ill. Every time they hop in circles together, people in the breeding farm can't sleep all night. The common name for this frog is the black-spotted frog, also known as the black-spotted frog. Every mid-April, breeders put the breeding frogs into the breeding pool. Male frogs have vocal sacs at the corners of their mouths. They puff up when courting, emitting loud croaking sounds. Female frogs have no vocal sacs and make very little noise, making people think they are naturally mute. They will choose the male frog with the loudest call, forming couples freely. Female frogs are typical tomboys. They are usually larger than male frogs. When mating, they carry the male frog on their backs. It's not easy to get a wife. Male frogs will hold on to the female tightly. No matter how hard you shake, it won't let go. Frogs are amphibians. They like to lay eggs in water. The male frog gently strokes the egg ribbon with its hind legs, assisting the female frog in giving birth, helping it lay eggs smoothly, while fertilization takes place in the water. In the natural world, the frogs lay their eggs and leave, letting the egg masses float alone, to survive or perish on their own. These crystal clear egg masses sometimes become food for their parents during artificial breeding, to prevent the frogs from eating the tadpoles. Once they finish laying eggs, the breeders catch them with traps. At a water temperature of 2025 degrees Celsius, frog eggs hatch in just 35 days. A thin film is placed over the nursery pond to provide insulation and prevent attacks from predators. At the same time, the breeders start cutting grass, drying and putting the yellowed grass into the pond as fertilizer. During this process, will generate a large amount of plankton. They are natural food for tadpoles. Balance nutrition with feed. Tadpoles grow naturally and strong. The newly hatched little ones are only a few millimeters long. They rely on yolk sac for nutrition in the first 3 days. Later they start feeding on other food. They breathe through external gills in the early stage. Later they switch to internal gills for breathing. Big head, big eyes, long tail. 2 months later, tadpoles enter the metamorphosis stage. First they grow hind legs. Then they grow front legs. The tail gradually shortens and degenerates. They switch from gill breathing to lung breathing. Newly metamorphosed frogs need to go ashore in time. Otherwise, staying in the water for a long time may lead to drowning. Breeders adjust the water level. Methods like building bridges with planks. To help them land. However, the process of metamorphosis and going ashore is not as simple as imagined. Reduced resistance caused by changes in body organs. High temperature and insufficient nutrition can both cause death. When tadpoles grow 4 legs, they start to stop eating. They live by absorbing nutrients from their tails, until the tail disappears and becomes a young frog, just started foraging at the shore. However, frogs are naturally nearsighted, ignoring stationary objects, but highly sensitive to moving objects. During artificial breeding, they mostly need to be fed with feed. If the breeder does not tame them in time, even if the small frogs stay in the feed pile, they will starve to death. In order to solve this problem, breeders have tried many methods, such as earthworms, yellow mealworms, and other insects, placing them on a feeding platform with feed, using live bait to attract dead bait, to train the frogs to eat feed. If breeding live bait themselves, the cost is lower than feed. Self-sufficient. It is a good choice. Some breeders have specially designed taming platforms. The netting has its own elasticity. When the small frog jumps onto the feeding platform, the pellet feed will move, instantly becoming a meal in the frog's stomach, usually around 10 days. The small frogs can change their eating habits, coming up at a set time and place to eat. Their growth rate is greatly influenced by their post-metamorphosis physique, and the temperature of the environment. Their weight generally increases at a rate of less than 1 gram per day. Wild frogs rest during the day and are active at night. Artificially bred frogs, although their eating habits have changed, they come out to feed on their own accord, but most of the time they will stay quietly. Only when disturbed will they jump around in the pond and resting places. They have poor eyesight and a dull sense of smell, unable to perceive food and environment through smell. Just by using a blade of grass, they can be tricked into performing. During the breeding process, breeders need to regularly catch frogs to conduct physical examinations on them. No need to use a hook when fishing for frogs. Their tongues are curled. Once they bite the bait, it's hard to escape. The fish farmers hadn't even had time to be happy yet, when they discovered that the former swimming champion was spinning in the water like a drunk person, constantly spinning in the water. In just a few days, they were all turning belly up. The surviving frogs also exhibit various bizarre phenomena. Clearly, they patrol the pond carefully every day. Regular disinfection and sterilization. Why is this situation still happening? In order to find the cause of the disease, to save the remaining frogs, they invited technicians to conduct in-depth research. It was found that the frogs were infected with Elizabethangia, commonly known as crooked neck disease. It can invade the frog's brains, causing the spine to twist and bend. It is highly contagious. If measures are not taken promptly, it will quickly spread throughout the frog farm. After thorough investigation and analysis, they found that the pathogen came from the soil. It turns out that the frog breeding density is high. When the frog's immunity decreases, they will be susceptible to various bacteria, and the frog's feces fall into the water in large quantities. It is very difficult to clean, and it easily leads to various issues. Farmers plant rows of rice in the frog ponds. The feces turn into fertilizer, providing nutrients for the rice, solving the issue of feces residue, while the rice becomes a natural habitat, providing food and shelter for the frogs, achieving mutual benefit. In addition, farmers also regularly drain the pond water, let the soil be exposed to the sun, disinfect and sterilize. In addition to preventing diseases, aquaculture farms also need to prevent various predators. A mouse. It can eat quite a few frogs when sneaking in at night, and they love to dig holes in the enclosures, triggering a mass escape of frogs. Yellow weasels are even more despicable. They directly settle in the frog farm. The egrets are not to be outdone. They call their friends in broad daylight. They directly start eating right under the farmers' noses. Farmers who are forced to do so can only place mouse traps in the frog farm. Install bird-proof nets. Wild frogs have a lifespan of about 5 years. Frogs raised in captivity can live up to 13 years. However, as a lucrative business, it is impossible for them to die of old age peacefully. If seedlings are planted in February or March, generally raised for 46 months, they can be sold for profit. The profit from breeding frogs is quite high. With good luck, conservative estimates yield a return of 20-30 per mu. However, frog prices fluctuate greatly, especially during the peak season for frog sales. Oversupply. Purchasers lower prices. Naturally difficult to sell at a good price. Of course, good quality. Still in high demand. Some attentive breeders will find, when frogs enter hibernation, market demand exceeds supply. Frog prices will soar all the way, sometimes even double that of summer. Such a huge price difference has sparked the idea for breeders to breed frogs out of season. Frogs are cold-blooded animals. When the temperature drops to 612 degrees, they will hibernate in caves. They breathe through their lungs and skin. They survive on nutrients in their bodies without eating. Breeders want to breed frogs in winter. They have to blindly dig with a hoe. If unlucky, they may only dig up 1 pound of frogs. They may end up with only 1 pound left. The loss is very high. Some well-equipped breeders will build insulated sheds in the frog ponds, delay the frog's hibernation by a month. They naturally gain more weight by eating for an extra month. The most important thing is hibernating in the shed. The holes dug by frogs are only 10 centimeters deep. Workers dig for frogs, saving time and effort. Greatly reduces the risk of injuring frogs. Every autumn when frog prices are lowest, they will buy a large quantity and raise them to adulthood. They will put them in the insulated shed, and wait until winter, then sell them at a higher price. This strategy is both valuable and effective, naturally making a good profit. Thousands of years ago, humans have had the habit of eating frogs for a long time. There are now many different ways to eat it. 5 kilograms of live frogs. Smoke out a pound of cured frogs. Convenient and delicious. Can be eaten all year round. It has both meat and rice. Ecological rice from the frog field. Green and organic. The price is high. It is also a good income. In the fragrance of rice flowers, it speaks of a good harvest. Listening to the chorus of frogs. Thank you for watching. See you next time.